Define female.
A person capable of bearing children.
How does society define female?
Society generally defines females as the weaker sex, and sometimes an object that can be possessed or controlled.
Do you feel that society tries to force you to conform to this definition?
It depends on what society we're talking about. American society as a whole, I don't think does, but there are different societies within the majority, maybe like a religious portion of society in general, that may encourage these stereotypes or definitions of female that are accepted by all females.
Okay, thank you.
And we're going to ask her 3 questions. First question, Allison, define female.
Female is someone that has a vagina.
Okay, now how does society tend to define the word female?
Someone who stays at home, second best, a supporting role, a caretaker, a mother.
Okay, now do you feel like do you feel society is forcing you to conform to that definition?
Yes, in a sense. I feel like it's harder for me to demand attention. Like, when a man comes in, everyone automatically respects them. I feel like I have to go through a lot more to be heard and have that same respect. Like the words, like you throw like a girl, kind of make me think that why is certain girl bad? Are we automatically just weaker just because of my gender and sex? So I feel like I am limited in some ways.
Okay, thank you.
Define female.
Female, well, obviously in the human sense of it is a woman. Obviously is the one that gives birth, that can carry a child, and also generally, or I guess societally, the one that takes care of most of the responsibilities in the household as well.
Okay, now how does society tend to define the word female?
When it comes to society, female are, again, usually that are expected to be nurturing, and the ones that are supposed to, enjoy cleaning, and also the ones that are supposedly, I guess, the weak or less intelligent counterpart to males.
Now, do you feel as if society is trying to force you to conform to this definition?
In certain aspects, yes. I think we've come a long way. However, I think like, for example, there are certain professions that are expected to be more female, like nurses, sometimes teachers, whereas engineers and doctors, those are expected to be predominantly male. And I think we have come a long way in that term, and that people are understanding more that there shouldn't be, and there's not necessarily to have that distinction, that we are more than capable. We still have definitely a long ways to go, especially we have big differences depending on where you are in the country and in the city. That also makes a difference.
Okay, define female.
My idea of a female is obviously a woman, but I think that a female can fit into several different roles. Obviously, a mother, a sister, there are several different roles. They don't necessarily have to fit into those categories, but can also be a working woman. There are several different roles that a female can play, but obviously a woman, someone who can fall under any category.
Okay. Now, how does society define a female?
I think society is progressing towards being okay with a female falling under any of those roles, as a boss, as someone who is in a powerful position, so I think that's a good thing. But I also think there still is this negative portrayal of women as, or female, I guess, as someone who can't hold that powerful position or doesn't deserve to hold that powerful position.
Okay, and do you feel that society is trying to force you to conform to that last definition?
I do think there are some stereotypes. I don't know if I personally feel that pressure, because it's kind of easy to kind of control your own life, but I do feel like there are pressures from society to fit a certain role of as a female, maybe to be forcing someone to become a mother or expecting someone to be a mother someday when maybe someone doesn't necessarily want that for themselves. Not for me personally, but just in general. I think maybe people expect that of women, or people expect women to do certain things, but I do think there is some pressure for women to, live their lives a certain way. So I think that still exists. I do think it is progressing to be more open, which is good, but there are definitely pressures for women to live to those expectations. Yes.
Okay. First question. Define female.
A female is a person. It can be considered by their sexual organs or their way they reproduce, but at the same time it's considered more of a tender, gentle person that reflects or brings out their own opinions or personality through emotions.
Okay, now how does society tend to define female?
They define females based off of their own ethics, based on their backgrounds. If they're from more of a African culture, they characterize a woman based off of someone who works in the kitchen, someone who cares for the children, someone who works as the woman, the person that they can care for children, care for the more emotional side. They don't really characterize them as someone that would take a more dominant approach on things, more so a submissive side.
Okay. Now my last question is, do you feel like society is forcing you to conform to that definition?
In a sense, yes, even though it's in a subliminal sense, they would have certain traits or certain rules that they put on, girls shouldn't have scars, or they shouldn't wear certain kinds of clothing because it's either too tight, it's too, it keeps them more centered. They give them these very discriminating or very challenging names that I would not like to say, but they give them certain titles or certain labels for whatever they try to do to express themselves, which isn't right, but is how they conform a person as a woman in society.
Okay, thank you.
So a female is one who is able to bear children. That means that you have to have ovaries. And that's about as technical as it gets.
Okay. Now, how does society tend to define the word female?
Okay. I believe that society would agree, between, I guess, the two genders or species or whatever. It would be the woman. The woman would be the one who reproduces and gives birth to children. But it goes a little further than that, I guess. So society has certain conditions or traits, if you will. So in that sense, females are, I guess, the weaker sex. Females have always, there have always been sort of roles for women. And, women were supposed to stay in their place, and women were the homemakers. And so women were very domesticated creatures, if you will. I think that is changing. I think it needs to continue to change.
And I'm going to ask her 3 questions. First question, define female.
Female is someone who has a uterus, ovaries, and a vagina, basically the female sexual organs.
Okay, so how does society define the word female?
I guess as in a girl or someone who's inferior to men or other people. I guess someone who can't do enough work as the other gender or sex.
Okay, last question. Do you feel as if society is forcing you to conform to that definition?
Yes, because everyone is always assuming that girls can't as in like for example, for like financially, like they can't be like financially stable or not as like strong as them or other things like that.
All right. Thank you.
A female is someone that has female reproductive organs, like they have a womb and they can like give birth, actually physically give birth to a child, and they have a vagina.
Okay. Next question. How does society tend to define female?
Society tends to define female as someone who's a caretaker, who basically takes care of the child and like who doesn't like go out to like work like it is in their job. Their job is to stay at home and take care of the child, of the children, and also like define female as someone who's kind of weak and whose worth should be based on their looks.
Okay. Now, do you feel that society is forcing you to do this definition per se?
What do you mean?
So, do you feel like society is forcing this definition upon you?
Yes, because if you go on like social media and everything, you can see people like in magazines, like skinny ladies and everything, and like they're trying to show you that this is what looks best. So yes, but like I don't think that should affect you if you have like a strong mind and you feel like that you